Until you have real consequences, we don't really pay attention.
Right.
Capital, bold, underlined. If you don't know what that is, you're rolling the dice in the dark.
Yeah.
I was a dad for the second time with a little girl, and my job is feed her, don't drop her, change a diaper. Well, now I also have a toddler. I'm still a dad, but that job description has constantly changed and flowed.
You think your job descriptions are clear, but they're not. They're performative, they're polite, and they're probably not being honest. Everyone says they want an A player, but according to Juan Kingsbury, will tell you most companies are not ready for them. Juan Kingsbury has spent nearly 2 decades decoding what people actually need to perform work. From training top-tier consultants at TTI Success Insights, he's an author, an engaging podcast host, and the founder of the consulting company Career Blindspot, a behavioral science consultancy that is flipping hiring on its head. He's built benchmarks for fast-growing companies, exposed team dynamics others have missed, and has helped leaders see what even they couldn't admit, that they are part of the problem. In this episode, Juan is going to drop truth bombs, what hiring is still trash and most leaders get it dead wrong, and reveals the truth that industry experts don't want you to know of why hiring is broken, and in how to truly fix it, so you can design roles, job descriptions that attract, not repel, the right talent. And it's not what you think. A lot of people don't know this. The number one mistake that most companies make in what the me versus job conflict really is, and how the lie we tell ourselves about high performers is really the cancer killing growth from the inside out. If you lead a team, make hiring decisions, or just want to stop feeling like you're managing around the chaos, you're going to want to listen to this one episode. So come join me. Imagine you're standing in front of a perfectly assembled team. Then suddenly everything unravels into what we call a WTF moment. Can you share a real story of when you realized your industry desperately needed your approach to diagnose and fix workplace dynamics, and how that moment fueled your passion behind what you do every day?
Yeah, anytime a new leader comes in, and I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a completely flawless team perform,
Right.
maybe, and you have your stints, but especially when you lose a good leader or a good like the person in charge, you get like an NBA team gets a new coach, that dynamic, even if they're running the same plays or same strategy, it just throws everyone off. You have your comfort, you have your tribal knowledge, and so that switch of like, oh, what are we supposed to do versus the old way used to be better, or this person doesn't know what they're doing. That's a regular occurrence. So an isolated one, I remember the first time I did a benchmark, which we'll talk about further, but the dynamic of everyone who's ever hired probably has a mishire and a mistake. And we can always talk about the negative. But when the aha went out for me is like, few people could actually describe accurately or in detail with nuance what it would look like when it worked out. So people can always complain, oh, this person didn't have work ethic or this or that. It's like, okay, well, tell me what they would look like when it does work out. And that was not just a light bulb for clients and other consultants I partner with, but for me of like, oh, I'm helping people harness the negativity into something constructive. And so, there's a lot of it's really 3 dynamics of leaders, roles, and then the people who do them. But anytime the person in charge is like, hey, we have a new direction. I don't care if you won last year's championship,
right?
That is going to make some people uncomfortable.
So when you experienced that, what was the catalyst that said, wow, I bring something to the table that can solve that?
Back in, I don't want to go too much in detail, but feel free if it's appropriate. I worked at the company that makes these assessments. So my job before my job today of the last 15 years as a leadership coach and consultant was helping other coaches and consultants in a variety of ways use our multi-science behavioral tools. And I was providing customer support, but it was really more of a sales opportunity,
right?
Where this guy's like, hey, I'm trying to sell this benchmark or help my client hire better, really is the more layman's. And I could explain to him the process, but he was trying to sell it as opposed to do it, which is a different thing.
Okay.
And that's when he was like, he is like, I remember he was venting to me, the coach. He's like, my client just has a laundry list of things that are going wrong. And I could kind of read between the lines of like, I'm tired of him complaining. And that's when I was like, well, can he, and I wasn't even trying to be like an aha clever. It was just a genuine thought of like, okay, if this guy's so negative and burnt out on bad people, well, what does it look like when it does work out? And even the coach I was talking to or consultant was like, oh, that's a good question. And so he came back and I wanted, this is 20 years ago, probably. He calls the next day and he's like, well, not only did I sell it, I kind of stumped him. So he's like, I don't know. It's like someone saying, my girlfriend's crazy. My last girlfriend or husband or ex-wife, like, okay, well, there's a common pattern here. And it's you. So
Yeah.
What do you want? And so that shift of kind of this domino effect from another consultant to a client back to me of, we haven't even solved the issue yet.
Right.
But just realize we were trying to solve the wrong problem. Thinking, and I think that still happens today as people think it's integrity or generational or age or political or societal. And those things matter. But most of the time, it's like, no, there's a reason why AI and automation is popular, because you program that and it does what you need it to do. It's a role performance, and people miss that of like, that is it's very objective. Like, I'm a fan of Simon Sinek, or at least aspects, but it's like, I don't hire my plumber because he's passionate about vacuum seals. I hire him because the toilet doesn't flush or the water's not hot. And when you lose sight of that in terms of hiring, or I should say when you regain that, that's when it's like, okay, we can solve this problem. And if anything, what are my expectations? Like, is it my code, not code, but new tag, or one of them is hire selfishly, which a lot of people are like, I don't want to be. It's like, no, if you're not selfish now,
you're going to pay the price later.
Yeah. And it's not be like a jerk.
No.
But don't lie about what you want, because if you hire and it gets right, that means it frees you up to do what you need, or hopefully what you want to do, if not both. But if you don't, guess whose job you now have to do and cover up for?
So I want to kind of go down, I guess, when we look at the workforce in today's world, right? What are some of the biggest challenges you're noticing? And if things don't change, what, in your experience, could be some of the effects down the road?
I think the biggest challenge, and as a new parent, I got a toddler and a newborn.
Yes, congratulations, number 2.
Thank you. And I got time to figure this out, but I'm like, I could be putting them on my taxes in 12 years, 13.
Right.
But college, if that's even a thing, or even a 40-hour work week, which to me is still necessary, but I'm like, why are so many jobs by default, Monday through Friday, 40 hours in office? I'm not saying it's wrong. I just don't think it's the standard anymore, yet people treat it that way. But I'm like, what am I going to tell my kids, or I should say advise them? And the biggest challenge is right now, because we have access to information, what's not just, well, I won't even say accurate, but what's relevant to me. And, I love the idea of remote work. I've been doing it for myself as a solo consultant for almost 20 years now. But I know it's not for everyone, at least yet. And so when you're on LinkedIn or social or talking to your friends at happy hour, you hear, it's kind of like keeping up with the Joneses, but like in the multiverse from a career. That, to me, is the biggest challenge as individuals, but even as leaders and executives, of like, hey, they're happy because they have these programs or this program. And it's very much like, you got to do what's best for you. But I also am not against like copy other people. It's not wrong to look at what the Joneses are doing, but to think you're going to replicate it exactly, or it's good enough, probably isn't the same. And so I think that's the biggest challenge. Too much information. But, or how do I filter the information? Because a lot of it is opinion or personal experience. And then what was the second part? Sorry.
So what do you see if things don't change, or we continue to do the things that we've always done? What do you see as the consequence down the road?
Oh, yeah. I mean, right now, it's not even down the road, but now, like, hiring still, I think, is trash. It's great, I think, in some aspects of how, like, job postings actually tell you what the insert expletive job is. But most of them know, and they're still, and this is, I guess, my social bias, but not putting salary, like, you're wasting everyone's time. And as a consumer, short of going to your doctor, when do you go buy something and you don't find out until later? So if you want job applicants, and I should say, if you want the right job applicant, like, up your game, man. Like, and so I think it's still trash on a scale of what it could be. I'm sure it could be worse, but right now I'm an analogy guy and I'll probably overdo it
No, that's
for this
fine.
one, but there are more dating apps than ever. That wasn't a thing
Right.
20
Yeah.
years ago. It doesn't mean there's better relationships. There's just more ways to get laid.
Yeah.
If you want a good relationship, the fundamentals of being yourself and having standards and boundaries, that still applies. Now there's more ways to get access to dates and interactions. And I'm not saying that's bad, but it's not a replacement for the inner work. And so I think that's the problem definitely later. But right now is that you have way too many sources to find candidates. But it's not about, like I always tell my friends or clients that I'm helping find, I know you're going to find work. But the question is, do you want to be more fulfilled and better paid? That's what I can help you with when I dabble in career coaching. But with clients, it's like hiring's the easy part, then to be determined. But hiring the right people, that's the art and science.
Exactly.
That you can do yourself, or I can come in and help you and accelerate. But even then, it doesn't attract the right people. If you have a bunch of low integrity people who only blah blah blah, well, guess what? You are attractive to them. So what's that say about your website, your message, how you talk to people at networking events? So that to me is already an issue. And this is a big left turn, so feel free to cut me off, but I don't think most organizations and leaders really want A+ performers. Just like most people don't want to buy Porsches, they want an affordable vehicle that gets them to point A to point B. And not to say you don't get a Porsche or someone doesn't get a fancy car, but you're going to pay for it. And not just do you have to pay for it, you have to maintain it. And so when people say, I want performers, I don't think they do, because they would incentivize it. And also, if everyone was a high performer, then that's a lot of extra incentive. I think we would be more content with, dare I say, C+ performers, B- with good attitudes. And,
Okay.
I'm using that are kind of negative.
But but we're going to dig into that. I want to go back because all of this starts with something you just said about job descriptions, right? And I've always talked about that because it hasn't changed. We keep focusing exclusively on a particular skill or experience or years or college that may or may not have anything to do with the culture, the role, or the leadership. So you said the job descriptions are trash. Walk me through why you think they're trash and what can we do to improve it?
It'd be a short walk. They're lying. They're not telling the truth.
Okay, how so are they not telling the truth? Give me an example.
I'll go back to the dating analogy or the app. My friend, when he first got onto it, he's like, I was looking at his profile, I was helping him swipe. And I go, you don't like hiking? You don't do yoga? You want someone who looks like they do all those things. But is it lying? Maybe that's not the right word, but it's not
embellishing.
It's not accurate. Yeah. And it's wishful thinking, which again, I'm not wrong, but it's like, let's get to the core of this job has problems, because if it didn't, it wouldn't be a job.
Okay.
Let's be honest about those problems. I need to memorize this, but there's this old, I want to take like 1800s job description.
Okay.
And it's about going on to like the North Pole or something. It's like, are you a risk taker adventurer who's willing to risk death? Apply here. And it's like poor pay, poor sources. Like you are filtering out everyone, but the person who's like, yeah,
that's me.
And so this is a marketing phrase that I've stole, but like good marketing repels 99% of your people.
Yeah, that's right.
So 20% are attracted. And I don't think most job descriptions, it's good mom and dad advice when you're a teenager. Be yourself. No one wants to do that when you're a teenager because we're weird and awkward. But if you want a good quality relationship, not even just marriage, you got to be yourself. And so a good job description is really clear on, this sucks. And most people don't want to do it. But the right people say, yes, I do.
I'm going to give you an example of that. My butcher, he was a Michelin chef, hardcore. Think of, what's the guy from Hell's Kitchen? Ramsay, right? Think of Ramsay, right? And he needed a back of the house worker. And he put this job description on the window. I have a picture somewhere. Need back of the house work. Do not apply if you get offended easily, if you do not like working hard, if loud noises or bad attitudes wrinkle you. Do not apply because you will not survive a day. And then it goes to the next one. you will go through a 3-day intense boot camp, and if you survive, then I'll consider hiring you. Thank you. It's like,
Yeah, that's again like a lot of people are offended. Great, he saved you, and more
right.
importantly himself the headache. I just watched this movie, The Menu, which is weird, but I kind of had some nightmares about it. But it's about, I mean, a lot of chefs are kind of that way,
Yeah.
and it's very morbid and horror. But it's like, because I'm thinking like, who are all these people that are doing what he says?
Yeah.
It's very cultish in the movie.
It is a
Everyone's that
cultish
way.
movie. It was weird.
Yeah. Oh, you saw it. Okay.
Yeah, I
And
did.
it's like, but that's the point, because when you don't get, it's weird of like when you hire, not that it's this simple, but my thing of any hiring managers or leaders, if you have mission critical stuff and you're serious about it, if you're not serious about it, I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong. It's just like, you're going to continue getting the results you've always gotten until another major technical shift changes that for the good or worse. But it usually comes down to, do you want someone to assimilate, acclimate, learn the language and just continue maintaining what we have, which maybe the status quo is an A+, and that's fantastic. Or do you want someone to disrupt? And that second part sounds cool and makes for good LinkedIn posts, but that also means they're going to speak a different language.
Exactly.
They're going to ruffle the feathers and change the dynamic of the environment, including you. And you got to be careful of what you're really asking for. When people, I want a little bit of both. I'm not saying that's wrong,
Right.
but you better be clear on the order of operations. Like I see with insurance sales positions all the time that need someone to pass that test.
Right.
It is important, but it's like, if you get someone who aces it but can't sell stuff in 3 to 4 months, you don't have your rep. If you get someone who barely passes, but then can't wait to go sell, that's your sales rep.
Well, how often do you find that most, whether managers, leaders, or even HR directors, don't have a good understanding of the culture, the responsibility, the function of that environment and that position? I need someone who can sell. I need someone that's okay going door to door. They're that disruptor, right? They come in because they're thinking more from a transactional point of view. And then they wonder why half your team quits, right? When 68, 70% of people quit, it's because of manager culture, not because of the items that you hired them for. Yeah. So would you agree that before we even start thinking about job description, we better understand, why is the role created? How does it affect the organization? Who are they going to be working around? And do I need a disruptor to kick them in the ass and move them forward? Or do I need someone to enhance what I already have? So would you agree that we don't do that enough?
Correct. I think, the short version, it's not just we don't do it, we don't know how. Because that holistic, strategic thing, I think even taught in schools, is until you have real consequences, we don't really pay attention.
Right.
When you're dating in theory, who knows, with AI chat boyfriends and girlfriends, maybe we can get better at hiring and you run a simulation. Actually, that's not a bad idea. But I think that's not just we don't do it, we don't know how to do it. And I think even if we did know how, and I think actually I should clarify, I think there are definitely some companies, if not industries, that have way better hiring process.
Absolutely.
And if you're a remote company that you're doing well, then yeah, you do. Because especially when you're that far apart, you better make it work. Otherwise, you're, to me, going to fail a lot faster than if you were in an office and things are going to move slower on consequences. So it's kind of like higher stakes. If you're remote, you better figure it out. But I definitely know remote teams are suffering because you have people that are not doing their job because leadership is not cultivating the culture you're talking about. But I also think even if it's figured out, it's going to change again. What I remember 20 years ago, probably the last time I put a job application, I won't say the name of the company here in Phoenix, but it was like, what kind of cereal would you be? And I'm like, what kind of time wasting is this? Now, at the same time, to my credit, I wouldn't have belonged working out there.
There you go.
Because of this corny stuff, or at least what I think is corny. But at the same time, they're not as big as they used to be. Mm-hmm. And those are questions were reflective of the culture, but not of the culture that needed to grow in the way they needed to. And I feel self-righteous for not taking that job, or not self-righteous, vindicated. But yeah, I think remember Cypress Hill, the rap group, that they had a song, Dr. Green Thumb, which was about marijuana. But a green thumb, usually when you take care of plants, anyone can plant, but to actually cultivate and bear fruit, et cetera, like you have to be much more subjective in how you curate a good garden versus objective, which is traditionally how businesses are run. You have your cubicles, so many metrics, which is not bad, but it's limiting. I think if we're actually going to get high performers, it's not about hiring. If you want better top tier talent, you better insert expletive, earn it. You got to do your due diligence. It's like looking for the next Hoshea Ohtani, or I think I just said his name wrong, or LeBron James. Like, yeah, you can go to a lot of basketball games, but how are you going to filter between someone who's going to be okay and someone who's going to be a phenom? You've got to have that radar, that money ball beyond just the stat.
Because if you do hire LeBron James, you better have a culture where they can thrive. Or not that they leave. And that's why there's some companies where people want to go work. The culture, the alignment, the management, the opportunities naturally attract those top performers. But if you're hiring high-level top performers and not putting, as you say, in the right environment for them to thrive, to cultivate, to grow, someone else is going to do that for them. So I want to go back to job postings. Okay, so be honest. Know your culture. What else can organizations do to improve how they post for a job so they may start to attract the right candidate?
I mean, this is going to vary in one's ability, especially if you're like a recruiter or hiring manager, because that's also the bigger you get, the more fragmented responsibility is. Like, why did we hire this loser? Oh, it's Jane's fault for what's like, well, Jane, she didn't decide the key accountability. She didn't decide versus a small business, you decide everything, but now you have to do the interviews, et cetera.
Right.
But I think what's missing is whoever's in charge. Like, what are their actual values? Not what do they say? And I'll be careful here, but like not LeBron, Elon Musk with the Mars thing, especially with the remote work. I remember thinking when I was like, it's his right to want to make people go back into the office. This is years ago, not recently. But also, hey man, you're trying to put people on Mars. You would think you would be the guy to perfect remote work. And I mean, I don't know the guy, but that's his priority. And I don't think it's about saving the planet. He's about, let's do big stuff that matters and gets attention. He's always wanted to be in movies and all these things. If I work for him, I can pretend like he's some environmentalist, or I can be like, no, this is a guy who wants to be on the cover of stuff, wants to be now in politics, et cetera. So as that person involved in this process, I got to be honest, what are leadership's real priorities? And not necessarily what's in print, but what do I see rewarded or pushed away? And now we're in kind of moral territory, but it's kind of like, I'm in Phoenix, great weather right now, overcast. In a couple months, it's going to be really hot. Yeah. I can lie to myself and say that it shouldn't be, and I could complain about climate change, or I can just make sure my AC works, make sure I have podcasts when I'm driving my car. I can prepare for those realities. So this is a long one, but it's like, what are leadership's real values? Capital, bold, underline. If you don't know what that is, then you're going to miss, you're rolling the dice in the dark on what leaders want. And what is also hard is even if you do, sometimes they'll say one thing and do another, and they change their minds. And when they have the authority and the power, do you want to be that person who says, hey, emperor, you have no clothes, or hey, I think this is wrong? And also that's part of the culture. I'm not saying they're good or bad. I probably wouldn't want to work for them. But at the same time, if I had a good cushy salary and I didn't, I could still sleep at night, I'm not judging anyone who would. But that is like, that's your driver of the vehicle or of the rocket ship. If you're not clear on what planet they want to land on, then all this other stuff will keep you busy, but will get disrupted internally versus external.
You work with a lot of companies and assisting them to define these items, these things, from people, careers, how to improve the workforce and things of that nature. Can you give me an example of each? An example where organizations were extremely not only clear in their values, but they lived and hired by values versus an organization that just had values on the wall.
You want me to name names?
No, I mean, as long as they're protected, but just give me an example of real life examples.
Yeah. I mean, well, here's an easy one. And once again, kind of timely, but you go to any government organization, there's these federal or statewide values, but individual departments, it's kind of like coming to the States. You're in America, but Virginia, a little different than Utah, And so, and that's not a knock, but it's a reality of, they might say we value X, Y, and Z, or they might cover up these values and this, but I still got to figure out, especially as a consultant who's doing business, who's writing the check, vetoing. A year ago, maybe a little bit more, I had a client who corporate had told them they needed to end the contract with me, and they were like, because they had resources somewhere else
Right.
that whatever. Well. Because we had the contract, but also because the client was like, no, this is helping us. We're able to hire way better hourly employees, technical level, but also we as a leadership team, and a fairly younger one. It was a multi-generational, or is a multi-generational family run business that got absorbed. That the difference there is, things like, or they were able to not just say, hey, we have this contract, but also we don't want to, we're going to honor this, but because we're benefiting from it and blah, blah, blah. So like, one, as an individual, I was happy that they valued it, but also what they valued is that as this, and I use this term very loosely, but conservative company, it wasn't so much about politics. I'm sure in some ways it was, but it was like, hey, we want to take care of our staff. We want to be there for, someone needs their tire blows out on the way here. We want to be able to help them, but because of corporate stuff and legalities, it got really complicated. So helping them kind of like reinvent but reclaim their values was something that I was not going in there to do exactly that, but that is part of the reason. And I think the ones who do are constantly, I'll use the tire now, kicking the tires on their values. It's not, hey, this is the thing we've always believed, and that we're just doubling down, sticking our heads in the sand. That's stubbornness. I'm not saying it's wrong, but that's different than saying, hey, this is what we believe, but now it's 2025, not 1995. Maybe we should update our software, or maybe we should do this.
Stop using Excel sheets, right?
Yeah. Can we be conservative and be remote employees? I'm making this up here, but I wouldn't be surprised that some people, if you put little brain nodes who identify as conservative, would see remote work as a very liberal thing. And it's easy to laugh and funny, but I'm like, yeah, it's a fear. But of like, what if it helps you have the values and the lifestyle and the family dynamics? So it's the ones who are constantly kicking the tires, that as opposed to changing them and innovating all the time. But they're saying, do we still believe in this, or how can we still uphold our beliefs? That's the big difference. And being maybe not a broken record, but beating a dead horse, it's the leaders. It's not the people at the organization. It's the people who, they're going to lose sleep at night when the numbers aren't there, but also when the numbers are there, they want to do it with integrity. They're the ones constantly saying, is this the company we want to be? And I'll give you one last one. I won't say the name, but it just popped in my head. This technically not a client. I've done some stuff for them, but a couple of years ago, right before COVID, this marketing company, or this marketing partner that very close with, or at least we've had some good conversations. He had just wrote this letter about innovating marketing, SEO, all this stuff. And basically like, look, we're going to innovate as opposed to wait for the next trend. COVID hit like 2 months later.
Oh, wow.
And all these other things happen, and I'm sure they suffered too, but he was basically like calling the shot, because he's like, change is going to come anyway. And as a marketing company that prides ourselves on being innovative and creative, we're not being that if we're waiting for the next trend versus making it. And that, actually, he was someone I talked to about remote work and hybrid. And even he had to question, like, I think we're more creative in office, but I also think people are more productive at home. He was reconciling, not compromising. I hate that word, especially as a married man. I think that implies everyone's losing. But he was reconciling what the new environment was going to allow him to do with his values. And that is someone who, it's like you're challenging yourself,
right,
versus waiting to be challenged.
So what would be your definition of corporate values? What is that? How do we define that?
It's not formal, but I think that's part of it. It's like, I want to know, what would you tell your friend if you worked at the company? What would you tell your friend about this company? Not post it. And what would a jaded employee say about this company?
Okay.
And then flip it into something constructive. And just like with your chef example, oh, that guy's an asshole and he doesn't do this and he yells, blah, blah, blah. Well, flip it. Okay, this is a truly high-paced, blah, blah, blah environment. It's another way is the unwritten rules.
Okay.
What are the employees saying about the company, regardless of what leadership says. And so to me, if you're in the executive suite, and it's hard because the bigger you get, power and authority, it changes and there's different systems in place. But it's ultimately, if you really simplify it, especially those who haven't worked in corporate, but or want to explain it to someone like your kids or family, there's things that are incentivized and there are things that are deterred. They might say one thing, but at the end of the day, what are the real rules that get someone promoted, more money, et cetera?
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of employees who think they work hard, and to their definition, they do, but not according to the corporate structure. So it's
Interesting.
easy to just shake your fist at the corporate, but it's like, no, you weren't paying attention to the rules. So yeah, unwritten rules. I do believe, anytime you see in print or social about a corporation saying, hey, we're changing our stance on this, on that, for the most part, cool. But it's like, what happens after you say that? It's like when I say, hey, I'm going to drop 20 pounds, but then you check in with me in a month and I'm still eating my pizza and I'm still having my beer. The unwritten rule is like, oh, you know what? I'm still going to have my carbs, but I really don't want to have the six pack as much as I wanted people to know that I have it.
Right.
So it goes back to it's not lying, but like, you got to tell the truth. And I think the bigger the organization, I wouldn't even say corporate, but you leave more chances for it to fall through the cracks. If you are not trying to actively incentivize your values, then you don't have your values. You just have your dating profile. So, you can get whatever it is that you need to get. But I think that's the difference, is if you actually want to incentivize, like, feel free to edit this out, but I stand behind it. If you're a patriotic, red, white, and blue loving company, you need to give your employees a week off between 4th of July, because nothing more American than that. And then especially religiously between Christmas and New Year's, because that's family time. And then you need to give them affordable healthcare so at least one parent can stay home. Now, that's a lot, but I also think, regardless of political views, a lot of people would like that about their position. They might not even love their job, but that allows them to have a good lifestyle, raise kids or whatever it is. But if you're like, no, you can't work remote and this and that, that's okay. You can still say you're a family-based company.
Right.
But if you're not actually incentivizing for your employees to have the time, go to the games, do whatever it is that you consider family values, then you're saying it, but you're not living it. And that's your right to. I respect your right to say it, but I also anticipate your employees are going to be like, yeah, they say that, but.
So there's a difference between, corporate values can align to family values as well. And every company's different. Every organization's needs are different. But when they're clear about what their corporate values are, as far as a for-profit organization, here's what we are looking for to make profit. But at the same time, we also appreciate the employees that help us to achieve that profit, and these are the family values. I've worked with companies who are 110, 120 years old, and they have some of the lowest attrition because of exactly what you just said. They take a higher priority to their employees' family values, life values, and have incorporated that into their corporate values. So when you have to work, they will give you 100%, because as the CEO said in one of the presentations that he did for the company, we work hard and we play hard. They took over this entire resort. I mean, there was maybe 2,500 employees, entire resort, all paid for, families included. They had one section that had nothing but, there was 7 bars, live bands, food trucks, I mean, everything. And then they had a lot more family time, plus working, sales training, all those other things. So they lived what they said, and that attracted a certain amount of people, and why people stayed with them. And part of this corporate values is giving the opportunity for you, the employee, to make a living, right? There's a career path. Some of you might want to stay where you are, but some of you have aspirations and want to improve your way of life for yourself and for your family, and there's a legacy there. Too often companies don't do that. And I think that's important, that part of your core values has to align to your employees' family values, or the perceived family values. But one of the things you said was so important. You can't just say it, you got to live it.
Yeah.
Right. So
I would even say saying it and not living it is worse.
Right, exactly.
I would rather, and this sounds a little nihilistic, but it's not. It's like, just don't say it. Just you don't have to say, "Oh, we hate families."
Right.
Say, hey, we pride ourselves. Like the finance industry, they're not saying, "Oh, we hate that." It's like there's a reason the stereotypes and the rumors about finance and big money stuff. No, I'm not saying every organization is that way, but that I think a lot of times we paint ourselves, not just these corporations, but we as individuals of, oh, I like hiking, and then I don't want to go hiking. Like, why do we? And also, you can change your mind. I think that's okay. But also, when you change your mind, there are going to be consequences with the people who were used to the previous way. And that's why I love business and the idea of capitalism anyway, is the innovation. Nothing stays the same, but then you get people who get upset about that. And it's like, well, this is the game. You can't play part of it. But I do think not just the family values, and I don't mean that like from a traditional family, it's part of that, but even as an individual, like, hey, you know, I'm not going to get married. I just want 10 dogs. And so I can go to a job and blah, blah, blah. I don't think it's a company's responsibility to do that. But I do think it's a hell of an opportunity if you like the work that people are doing. And there's something I'm kind of going to not walk back, but add in. I think when I said earlier, when people say, hey, we want A+ or high performers, I think I said they're liars or they don't really want that. And I'll stand by that. But what it is what I'm really saying is, hey, we don't want your A+, Rico. We just want you to come in and do this job at an A+. Now, when Rico comes in and he knows he's capable of all these amazing things, that's it? I don't get to do everything else? Well, maybe if there's another job, but it's like saying, hey, LeBron, we just want you to shoot free throws.
Right.
Like, do more, man. And so I think that's the problem. It's like we say it like it's this permanent trait.
Right.
You give me a high performer hustler and I'll find some jobs that they're going to hate and be hell, I was a toxic employee. The same thing that makes you a high performer makes you go rogue or hinder another company because you're not in alignment with their message. And so it's not so much that we need everyone to be great, but we just need to be clear, like, this is the job.
Right.
And as long as you do the dishes and help me make the filet mignon, this is what I'm going to pay you. As opposed to, we're going to release your potential and you're going to have your own chef.
Right.
I don't think people blatantly lie like that, but they come pretty damn close. Companies.
Right.
I feel like they do say, hey, there is this career track there. And a lot of times there isn't. And it's like, don't do that to yourself.
Yeah, it's the politics, all the inside, regulations and everything else. And it's always frustrating when you say you want a top performer, high performer, but then handcuff their hands. You can only do this.
Yes.
Right? You can't do that. You can't do it. Well, then why are you hiring me for? Right? And that's why you have that turnover. And so I want to go back because many organizations struggle with not just hiring the right person and onboarding them, right? Because they're only looking at very singularities that put a person with a certain skill set to do a job to generate revenue. And you had mentioned a word before that I think would be a good place to bring in here is benchmarking. So tell our audience, what is benchmarking and how can that help alleviate some of these biggest challenges we just talked about?
Yeah, and I'll actually even add in another challenge, and I think this is, for me, I love it. It's exciting. But for the rest of the world and employees and hiring managers and corporations, it's a problem. Jobs change constantly. And what a benchmark is, or I'll call it an ideal talent profile, is saying, if you're familiar with DISC, and I'm sure if you're a client of Rico's or going to be, you're going to know, and definitely mine, that's what brings us together. But even the best assessment, which I believe ours are, is only telling you about a person, short of having a bunch of questions that tell you about the job, which the last time, Myers-Briggs, a Big Five, Enneagram, usually not. There's something in there, but even ours is just telling me about Rico as a person. What a benchmark is measuring the job, the role that person's supposed to do. And what would be the ideal DISC profile, be the ideal motivators, competencies, et cetera. Another way to say it more shortly, a square peg and a round hole, or a square peg and a square hole. Behavioral profile, a personality profile is measuring the peg, the person. A benchmark is measuring the shape of the hole that you need to fit in.
I love that.
And so
that is so good.
Going back to the leaders, or what I will say, be a little crass before you beep this out, but I say, whose ass is on the line?
Right.
Let's bring them in. And also, whose life gets better immediately? I need those as subject matter experts. I'm really picky. I don't want more than 3. Other people will have more. And there's exceptions to that. But in general, I don't think there's the higher consequences. Those people tell me this is what the job should do. If I could make a robot to do it, they'd be doing this. So that is basically being really clear on, this is the problem the job needs, that it has to solve, dangerous waters, you might get scurvy, whatever it is.
Right.
And now you reverse engineer that to, well, if you found the right person, it'd be a glove to fit, as close to be. Now, is someone ever a perfect fit? No, or rarely. And even if they were, there's so many dimensions. Like if you're looking for the head doctor of a hospital, they still need to be a doctor.
Right.
You can't just say their profile. But if you're looking to innovate a hospital, or if you're looking to increase profits, or both, or some other combination, it's a different type of hospital. And so the kind of doctor who wants to do that job, yes, they've done the medical experience, but motivationally, behaviorally, they're more wired for the ride that they're going to be asked to do. So a benchmark is basically kind of carving out what would perfectly fit in this position. And we say, people vary, but a third at best of your decision when you're hiring.
Yeah.
The hard skills, like I said, the technical skills, education, et cetera, how you feel about them, and that stuff still matters. But in addition, and I not psychic, but I tell people, I'm a betting man, that this is going to be true whether or not you're measuring it. So you might as well know it about a person.
Exactly.
And you might as well know ideally what you would want. And this is a broad scope, but if at least someone is 60% of what you need them to be for the role, it's not great, but at least if they have the skill and you like them in the interview, okay. But that 40%, that's a blind spot.
Big time.
We got to acknowledge that. If they're 80%, I'm really liking it, especially if they have enough of the skill and you like them enough. But those could be deal breakers too. But I'm not going to hold my breath for 100%. And the last thing I'll tack on, which goes back, the other challenge is, especially as a leader, especially as an executive, the job's going to change.
Yeah.
Maybe not dramatically, but enough. And I'll liken it to, a week ago, I was a dad for the second time with a little girl. And my job is feed her, don't drop her, change a diaper or two. Well, now I also have a toddler. I'm still a dad, but that job description has constantly changed and flowed. And so the other challenge that's always been, and I think this is why leaders get frustrated with people they promote, is, well, I'm still a sales manager, but you've not factored in how different your life is post-pandemic, post-election, et cetera. And so that benchmark is helping you keep score, or I should not even score, a dashboard of, this is actually what matters and what the ideal person would look like if they were achieving it every day. Because one person's trash is another person's treasure. One person's hell job is another person's, this is great, if not fun.
And that goes back to what we were talking about. If you don't understand clearly your core values, your corporate values, family values, and all you're looking for is a set of skills to do a job, then when that job changes or adapts because of external factors, then that person no longer can do that job. Or the opposite, you have a high performer doing one singularity and now they're frustrated and now becomes toxic. And that's what I really like about the benchmark, is because it forces you to think about the role itself. What does the role require for it to function at the highest level? And anyone that gets closer, 60, 70, 80, 90, they're going to have a natural aptitude to all of the criteria that role needs. And it's not just skill or experience. One of the things that I've helped a lot of clients think about is, what's the culture? What's the pace? What's the team? What's the management style? Are they customer facing, or are they back of the room? All the other things that you don't realize until they get there. And even as you were saying, you take your top performer and you promote them. Now you are the sales manager of the exact same team you were part of. Well, if that sales manager, that new sales manager, doesn't get training on how to manage people, you're just created a toxic environment, because the only thing that new sales manager knows is what I did to get here. And I expect everybody else to do so, right?
Yes.
So that's why they struggle, because you're now managing people. You're not managing an outcome to a number.
Yes.
So it's really important that you have the right tools, but also how to utilize those tools. So my next question for you, Juan, is, you've helped leaders bridge the gap between performance and job satisfaction, right? Whether it be clients or jobs. What's one WTF myth that managers cling to about hiring and engagement?
That young people are lazy and don't want to work. That one.
I think
It's
that's
not.
anyone that's baby boomer or older, right?
Yeah. Oh no, it
Or-
goes back. There's this. I saw a thread or on Twitter years ago. It's like 1820. Young people today.
Yeah.
1905.
They
And,
don't know how to do things. They don't work. They don't have
yeah.
yeah.
And that's where I'm not a Luddite. I definitely use technology, but I should say I'm a sci-fi fan.
Right.
That's all. It's all their thought exercises and what happens if, or when, I should say. It might be 50 years from now, but it's fun entertainment in the short term. But that's what it is. You have these managers or leaders or parents. This is how I had to do it. And now these kids, they don't want to do it the way that I had to do it. Well, yeah, you walked in the snow uphill both ways in 130-degree heat, but now they have an autonomous car. They can get to work. Like, if you could have done that, I like to think like the most badass Marine today, if they went back in time and they met a soldier 200 years ago, that soldier would have been like, "What are you whining about?"
Exactly,
Like,
right.
you have both feet. Like you ate this month. Like, shut up. And just because
You got a bed.
hard,
Never mind. You got a bed and a uniform, boots. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I was gonna get real morbid here, but just technology does make things easier, which does take something away. Like I say, like, oh, if I walked everywhere instead of drove, I'd probably be in much better shape and healthier,
Right.
and probably much more tan. But also, that would have made everything really hard. So that's, I think, the hardest thing is it's so easy. Once again, I'll go back to the word. They're lying. They're not lazy. You're lazy for not choosing to understand the right people who want to come work in your noisy ass kitchen so you can go be the chef you need to be.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying you're not doing yourself any favors by labeling any ism, racism, sexism, ageism, etc. There's probably a lot of truth to it, but it's not helping you get to your results. So I think that is just going to be a constant. Hell, I'm sure I'm going to do it one day.
Right.
That I'm going to start to be, or actually, no, I do it now. And when I realize I'm judging people, I'm not, I'm very practical entrepreneur, but I'm like, oh, you know what? That's not in my best interest. But it's hard to unwind and self-regulate to get there, but that's the skill. But yeah, I think that's what holds back so many people from getting what they actually want. The elixir of complaining and judging other people who don't work as hard as you. All jobs look easy when you're not doing it, but you want someone else to do this job and you want them to have a good attitude and do it well. Well, put the effort in. Otherwise, guess who I think is lazy?
Well, and I love the name of your company, Career Blindspot. So if you had to summarize what you do fundamentally to someone who doesn't know you or what you do, how would you summarize it?
Yeah, the basic is I'm leadership coaching. I even struggle with that, but I'm like, that's what I'm helping the people who have authority and power make better decisions in their best interests as well as the other people they affect. But the phrase career blind spot is a little misleading. People like, oh, are you a career coach? But what I'm doing is I'm telling you the inevitable. Whether you are a job seeker or an executive, or you're hiring someone, that, hey, you say you have this job and you want to put this person in here. And let's go back to the green thumb garden. Well, here's what's likely going to happen. You want a redwood, but right now you have a cocktail to get, 10% of the size.
Right.
So I'm kind of telling the statistical outcome that how happy you're going to be based off the talent you have and then you're acquiring. And it really boils down to these three tracks of you got to know yourself, know your team, and engage ideal talent. Now, I don't care if you are a leader or if you're a job seeker, those three lanes are inevitable and you will have blind spots, just like in your car, in your career. You got to use your mirrors. It's not a bad thing to have a blind spot. It's a bad thing to know you have it and ignore it and expect that you're going to get to your destination, not just safely, but at all. So yeah, it's that inevitably people think, I'll be silly in a positive way, when hiring managers are like, oh, we hired the sales person because she was the captain of her, or because she was an athlete, and athletes are always good salespeople. Do you think all dogs are boys and all girls are cats? Because that sounds about, like, I get it in theory,
right?
But I need to know a little bit more than she just played basketball.
Right.
Was she the captain? Did she win back to back? Like, is there that obsession about it? Because it's like saying all war heroes are going to be the best leaders in the company.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to get on the NFL and say that, or hell, I would, but people are going, well, I'm like, I'm not discounting their effort. I'm saying the skill doesn't translate in the way that we would hope it does.
Right. Or assume it does.
And it's like the blind spot of all careers. And I'll make this a little personal, but I even realized like doctors or medical, I think their job is to help me be healthy. It's not to make me sick, but what I realized is, no, it's to do the thing that they've committed to do so the insurance pays it. I had a blind spot to what I thought their service they were providing me is. And I think they do too, because they think, well, we're going to make you better, but really all we can do is this. You know? An auto mechanic doesn't make me a better driver. It fixes my car, or they fix my car. And so that's what it was, is that people have these, myself included, blind spots to the future of a job outcome, be it themselves or someone else.
So you said 3 really good things. Know yourself, know your talent. What was number 3?
Know self, which is about knowing your own talent, basically individual one-on-one coaching type stuff. Really define that. To me, everyone is a leader. When you're flowing in life, you're leading. You might not call it that, but it looks a lot like it. Know team, and these are KNOW, know to knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's understanding the talent of the people you work with, as well as the role, the talent to fit. Like, hey, I got LeBron. Oh, but he's playing football, which I think actually he would have been a good football player, but not as good as basketball. Or Michael Jordan playing baseball. Like, I think you deserve to, or you belong somewhere else. But,
right.
So it's the ability to not just empathize, but to benefit from and respect the other people around you. And then lastly, engage ideal talent, which is the benchmarking and the hiring. Or the other way, if you're a job seeker, it's like, hey, who I'm looking for my next job. Who do I need to talk to get the job where I get to be my 10 out of 10 self? So those 3 lanes, knowing yourself, knowing other people, I call it the team, or engaging the right talent that you need. Those are the DNA, that's what I'm going to teach my kids. I don't care what the landscape looks like in the future. Those 3 concepts will get them at least to a content job, if not something that they can feel great about and get paid for.
You know, all of this sounds really hard, okay? You know, people have been trying to do it for years. You know, we still see a huge attrition in a lot of organizations. Some get it right. With the advent of technology, you know, we use assessments, we use data to clarify and create a little bit more confidence, both in hiring, development, leadership, communication, in so many different ways. How do you see AI and technology enhancing the ability for organizations to do those 3 things we just mentioned? Know yourself, know your team, and know the role.
Well, you triggered me, Rico, because I don't think it sounds hard, but also I'm biased because I do it all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, you're an expert at this. Most people aren't.
Yeah, but I will say that's the difference is I used to think, oh, I don't like working hard. And then I'm like, well, how do I have a business? How did I get a house, raise kids, have a healthy marriage, work out, break my like, it's not hard work and I can't be cheating the whole time. But I realized, when I engage my brain a different way, that's from knowing myself. The person who, I got certified 20 years ago, but it's like martial arts or faith. You got to practice it. And so to me, you could say that's hard too. But when you actually want to do it for your reasons versus you're being shamed or you feel obligated or anything other than your reasons, it's hard. But the things in life that are worth it are hard. And so I'm like, my issue isn't so much that it's hard. It's like, I don't want people to think it's not a worthwhile hard. But that's where
that's true. Yeah.
People will call me for, hey, Juan, hiring or team. And but I try not to be like sneaky about it. It's not a Trojan horse, but we always got to start with you.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have issue, but like, okay, it's your company or your department so know self. It might not be right away, but if I'm going to do a good job, I got to help someone understand what it is they really want. Because even my clients, executives to job seekers, they struggle to articulate what they want. They kind of know it deep down, but unless they're doing therapy and journaling, which I think are all great, but it's kind of hard to get it out in the workplace because now it's personal versus this. So a little bit of a bunny trail, but it is hard. It is a lot. And to go to AI, I even dabble with ChatGPT, and it actually, you're going to promote my book later. It's in my ChatGPT. So the other day I was at a networking event and I was kind of tired. So I was like, hey, what should I say to introduce myself to find this client? Spit it out.
Yeah.
It told me like what to say. It basically took took my old files that I had in my head. And so I think two things. It's kind of like if you're shitty at the guitar and you get a bigger amplifier, you're just going to be shitty louder.
Yes.
And so, but it's still really cool
Yeah.
to hear music loud. So
Right.
I'm not against AI, but automating and fast tracking, especially in inferior assessment, I worry about. Like people say, oh, this is going to tell you your disc style by how you type and what you look. I'm like, I do not want people engaging with me of how I present online. And frankly, you know, after years of seeing and unfriending people on Facebook for various reasons, I'm like, I'm not friends with this person online. In real life, they're different. Not to say it's not valid, but I really put a big asterisk on anything that's gathering data from someone's online presence if I'm expected to engage them as a real human.
Gotcha.
But the second part is I also think just like I'm really excited for healthcare. If I were to able to put all of my history, I broke my arm, I did this, you know, this medicine, my dad has this disease, or my brother, or my mom, whatever it is. And now my doctor is able to go in. And so I think from there, like going back to what I said at the very beginning, so much information, but how do you know what's right and filter? So I think with AI, between knowing yourself, knowing a team, and then looking for talent, to be able to just ask this machine that just is regenerative. It's not giving you anything new, but sorts through your history of bad hires and what you know you need. I definitely think it can accelerate it, but it needs the ingredients need to be.
Yeah, I was going to say it spits out based on the quality you put in. No different than a benchmark, right? So it's how you use that tool, and it depends on what you're feeding that tool. You feed it crap, you're going to get crap back. And we're seeing that with us is that we're being very careful as to the parameters, the quality, the information to an outcome, and we're using it to find some of those small details. As you just said, you know, what is the common denominator from all these bad hires? You know, look at your job description, look at the role. What is it that we're missing? And we're trying to find the area that maybe as human beings from bias we are not seeing, that technology may point out, and now we can course correct. We don't want to use technology to make the course correction, but it can point out areas that we're not paying attention to, not aware of, or not even thinking. And that is true even in the workplace. And there's one area that you're a master of the benchmark and everything else, but there's one area that you speak really well about and know really well are, as employees, there are three conflicts that we tend to identify in our reports or why we do certain things. The me conflict, me job conflict, and what's the third one? Me you conflict, right?
Yeah.
So those can create either a psychologically safe environment or explain why sometimes you do what you do or make the decision that you make. So let's go through them. Let's talk about the me versus you conflict in the workplace.
Yeah, and actually, I will circle back to the AI thing because at the very last one,
no, go ahead.
Me will go. But everyone, picture a Russian nesting doll, and for those unfamiliar, there's these little toys that you open one, it's like a little person, and then there's a smaller one and a smaller one. Our industry, or I should say, any assessment industry, coaching industry, is, from my point of view, based around me versus you. Two people don't get along, or want to get along better. It doesn't have to just be negative, but at least two or more people are not communicating effectively. And it's good to know someone's disc style, Enneagram, whatever it is, but at surface level. It's like saying, you know, a husband and a wife, or two people, your two friends aren't getting along. It's good to know, but always deeper. And this is where I realized, and you've given me plenty of compliments, but I realized, I'm at a different level here with my peers that I had been training when I first started. But is me job that, Juan and Rico aren't getting, or there's an issue with Juan and Rico. Maybe that we're not even fighting, but you're disappointed with my performance. You wouldn't be the first. but if you look at it, then, what is my job? Juan's supposed to be doing sales. And the way he's wired behaviorally, motivationally, is pretty close to his sales job. But that gap where he's 80%,
right?
20%.
Right.
That's what Rico needs filled on. And so does Juan know that? Does Rico know that? So we can get us to get along, and that's nice. Like, it's never been personal. People will say that a lot. I like them, but it's the job. You don't need to be friends to win a championship. Shaq and Kobe, and I'm sure there's other
Right.
professional sports, but you need to be able to trust each other to be in the position, especially as it changes. And especially using like a sports analogy in playoffs, it's a different series. You have different opponents, abilities, weaknesses, et cetera. You have to adjust. So the role, the me versus job, is that Russian nesting doll, which I realize I can't not see it. And like zeros and ones everywhere, not just professionally, but even personally, when people tell me things. But then always underneath the core of everything is me versus me. Look in the mirror, Rico. You're disappointed with Juan, but what do you want? You're the sales manager and you've been doing A+ work, and Juan came in and but you're his manager. You're supposed to be developing him. Or no, you've always been given people who hit the ground running and you just need to people often are in conflict with what they really want. They say, go ahead, sir.
No, so that almost like the manager has a top performer that's toxic, but because they're generating so much revenue, they leave them alone, and it creates a toxicity around. Is that what that?
Yes.
Okay.
Part of it, but it's that. Okay, so let's say you're the manager and you have a toxic person. I'm saying, hey, let's just call them Courtney. That's my wife. Let's put her on blast. Courtney is amazing, or her results are amazing, but she is just ruffling everyone's feathers, wrongs, and even our clients, we're not quite sure, but the numbers and the margin's great. I'd say, okay, well, Courtney's wired this way and you're wired this way, so this explains how you can talk to each other. But if you actually want to get to the root of this issue, we got to go deeper. And it sounds like she's a perfect match for her job. And you right now, if you're having issue addressing this, it's because there's probably something off that you're like, I know as the manager, I'm supposed to address this, but I'm not sure how, which is okay. It's not wrong.
Or I don't want to. I don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
Which is what I usually get.
Yeah, because I'm afraid of her. In your case, knowing you, it'd be like, because I don't want to lose that margin.
Exactly.
And I would respect that. But the me is you realizing that, like, yeah, I don't want to rock the boat because I get this margin, but also I have all my B+ players.
Right.
And they're so close. What do I do? So getting down, if I'm talking to you, yeah, you started with talking about Courtney's toxic, but we go deeper to be like, you don't want to talk to her because you don't want to mess. That's the me conflict. Right. I want something, but I'm trying to reconcile it. But also, if we really think she's worth salvaging, we would want to have that conversation with her. Hey, this is what you're doing. You know you're the best. Why are you doing X, Y, and Z? Well, my team doesn't step up, and Rico just lets me do whatever, and I perform. You're going to have her reasons, but that's by working that way. It's almost like holistic, alternative medicine. It's like, that's how we get the symptoms to change versus just say, hey, adapt your style. It's not wrong. To me, it's just not sustainable. So those 3 tiers, you always got to go to the center, and that's the person doing the inner work, which I realize not everyone wants to do.
No, they don't.
Or I should say is ready to do it.
Exactly.
And this is a weird kind, maybe not plug, but I think the work you do and I do sometimes is a better alternative to people who really should just go to therapy. And doing both is, to me, even better.
Yeah.
But really both, it's the practice, and here's that word again, or the opposite, of telling the truth.
Yeah.
I think we spin so much in our head. And so by paying a therapist to like your job, this is the most selfish thing I could do. And people feel uncomfortable with that. But those of us who are like, I'm tired of not sleeping or whatever, it's the exercise in truth telling. So whatever you want to call it, wherever you think you're going to get it, that's what's important. But that's why the me conflict, it's so much easier to say she's a bad employee.
Exactly.
For you to realize, no, but I like getting my bonus.
Exactly. I don't want to lose my job. It's making me look good. I know everybody else is upset, but I'm okay.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, that's always going on, those 3 tiers in every relationship between you and her, between her and the client, between her and her peers. And it's like I just see these 3 little triangles spinning everywhere.
Yeah.
And like you said, it is hard, or I say it's complex. But when you can get to that, then I realize people aren't going to be me, although it is fun to do this, but they can get enough of it. It's like I can teach you to be enough of a mechanic that you can go cross country because you want to, not because you're trying to impress someone. But your car will break down, but you know how to fix it. And not just that, you're going to enjoy it. And you're going to mess with it and toggle it. Like I can give people, I think you give people enough of that, which brings me back to the AI.
Yeah.
I realize this is one of my challenge. The short version, my wife, Courtney, she's really great at it. But about a year ago, I finally was like, let me dabble more aggressively. And the short version is I was asking really bad questions and I was getting frustrated. It's a reflection of how good of questions you ask.
Yeah.
So talk about quality information you're feeding
Mm-hmm.
it. I was getting mad and I'm great at all this stuff, right? And so it taught me, I was like, I need to get better. It's like getting mad at a child.
Mm.
You know, yeah, especially you're a tired parent, but at the end of the day, they're the innocent one. The machine's not even innocent, but it's your fault if it's not giving you good information.
Yeah, if you don't know how to
Me
become a better
reflection.
prompt engineer, you're going to get whatever you put in, right? It's just designed to provide what you ask it to. So, and that's really true, the same thing with leaders and managers. So if you recognize you have this me conflict, what's the fix? How do they fix it?
If you recognize you always do. You're constantly being thrown off of what you say you want and what you do. That's okay. Spiritually or religiously, like that's what being repent or resetting, starting over. I think a while ago you used to have the pendulum example
Right.
of like you kind of swing. So whatever your model or practice, and if you don't have one, get one, because you're not perfect. You have an ego, and that ego feels good when you are right and other people are wrong. But the me, like I remember Franklin Covey, or not
Yeah,
remember,
yeah.
but the 7 Habits. I think a lot of type A business leaders or technical experts turned leaders do the first 3 steps really well. All the self interdependence or independence. It's the following 3, and especially the last one, sharpening the saw, that I think a lot of people, even when they're successful, struggle. And that's collaborating with other people. Because collaborating requires not just empathy, but self-regulation. That make it about me and my wife again. I love my wife. It's never been in doubt. Do I like her all the time? Does she like me all the time?
Yeah.
And one time I remember oversimple, but I'm like, my wife is so smart. She's really good at researching. She always finds these great financial deals, super compassionate with helping people solve problems. And what was the other one? Very like nuanced. We live in an older historic home and just like artists, hippy dippy kind of stuff. But the other day I was like mad, and I'm like, man, she doesn't know how to say no to people. She overanalyzes everything, and she's all nitpicky. And then it hit me. Those are the same things. Just right now, they're not serving me, and vice versa. She loves to hear me talk, and sometimes she's like, "Juan, shut up, you're talking too much." And so that me conflict is like you're gonna be thrown off all the time.
Right.
That's okay. Forgive yourself. But if someone is not doing what you need them to do, the opportunity is with you, not them. And to me, good EQ is getting the best result that you believe is possible, not being idealistic and saying, but they should have done this. So you are going to get triggered. And that me conflict has more to do with you than the actual person, but it's an opportunity for you to learn. And so at that point, hopefully you have a RICO or an assessment or a therapist or whatever it is. I say the more the merrier, but it's to help you get centered and regulate that. It's not bad to have emotion. Like to me, eliminating them, I would like to, but no, I'm not. And really, I wouldn't want to, but it's how do I let it go, not shut it down and put it away, because it's going to fester and then you get your ulcers and all the other things that keep people up at night. And to me, that's actually how I really keep score of people. It's like, how well do you sleep? And it's not a judgment, but it's like, hey, if you can get a better quality sleep or a little bit more, whatever, you can't really cheat sleeping. And I think that's a problem for quite a few people. But yes, just say, I am gonna be inconsistent with my values. That's not the problem. It's lying that you never do it and course correcting. So whether it's repenting, I call it course correcting in the workplace. It's okay if the company says we have family values and then they realize, oh crap, this last year, I'm not saying you to change them now. I'm saying, do you want to keep them? Okay, course correct.
Right.
Own it. You don't need to say everything, but just say, here's what we're going to do to get back on track. That to me is way more collaborative and for the right people who are gonna be like, wow, that's hats off. We don't expect perfect, but we don't like it when people mess up and then pretend like that wasn't their fault. So yeah, it's the me conflict is inevitable, and the real opportunity is if you say it this way, I don't expect leaders to have a lot of self-compassion for their team if they don't have it for themselves.
Right.
and it's a practice. So like if we're trying to get you, Rico, to deal with the toxic, we are going to talk about that person, but really I want to know, like, there's probably a little bit of shame, guilt of, but I like the money. No, it's a good thing, Rico. That's your job. You're the sales manager.
Exactly.
And so by you admitting that to you start to let go of that judgment, and it's still going to be hard, but now you can do it with your head held high, and regardless of how she behaves and the outcome later. But that's the me practice, because it's, and I liken it to, you can't really do your own dental work. You can brush your teeth, but when there's some serious stuff, you need an expert or some special tools, maybe some Novocaine, because sometimes the pain hurts. But by addressing it, you're not suffering later worse than you would have.
So how can the assessment tools that we have, even with some of the new technology, how can that help organizations, leaders, or even employees, in your experience, to identify that or improve that? Or how do we use those tools more effectively?
I think a universal, it's like an icebreaker. It just kind of, it doesn't have to be perfect, but by introducing that, it gives something, it gives everyone something to talk about and challenge. This is more for facilitators, but even for the people who are going to have these, you get people like, I don't agree with this. I love that. That tells me people are paying attention.
Right.
I don't hate when everyone's like, oh, I love this and it's great. But I rather people say no, because it's a simple, very straightforward process. Very complicated. Ours are very valid and you're very thorough on it. But to me, you're accelerating. You're getting pushed into the deep end of the fun pool, and it can still be this lightheartedness, but it kind of not grease the wheels, but gets you ready for that conversation. So let's take Toxic Courtney again. We have the workshop. Okay, she kind of gets it. Now we're going to do a one-on-one. Now I'm going to go over her talent, her job, and Rico and her peers. It starts to come out versus me having to attack her, or at least she feels attacked.
Exactly.
It
creates a self-awareness. It creates an understanding, of what drives them, the ideal environment, what motivates them, how to manage, how to communicate, all those other little things that as human beings, either we take for granted or only use what's comfortable to us. And that's where there's a conflict, because what's comfortable to me is the opposite to the other person. And what I find is that when we have these tools, it creates a neutral conversational point of mutual clarity and understanding, especially if it's facilitated by someone who knows what they're doing. Because now you can point out, do you remember why this person or this situation frustrated you? Well, here's why. This is their perception of that situation. Or this person is much better with a one-on-one than they are with a group of people, and you have them with a group of people. It's not about skill. Do they have a natural aptitude to feel comfortable and confident to do those things?
Let me add something. I think it's helpful. I remember I was maybe 21 interning at this health and fitness center around the town. And I got invited to what I didn't realize what it was at the time, but my boss was like, I want you to be here and experience this. And hindsight, very valuable. But it was this employee conflict. Like, these adults were acting like angry children. And I remember being like, they're just arguing. And there was like a husband, wife, all this. It was just drama. And it reminds me of like an awkward like Thanksgiving meal, family argument.
No, not that one.
And basically what I have in my head is like, oh, that was handled so bad. Probably with good intentions, but my guess is it just made things worse because now everyone was witness to it.
Right.
And people dominated not just our assessments, but the way we facilitate. It takes that same energy and emotions, but flips it constructively, because now one person's facilitating. There's no one, dominating the conversation. So someone like you or myself is able to direct things, but also because they have this assessment that is mostly viewed positive. But one of my favorite things is there are objective things that can hurt some people's feelings, because it's just the other side of the coin. Yes, Juan, you are very energetic and optimistic, and you have high energy. You also can talk too much on the podcast, but everyone has that. And so it almost, probably not the best term, but I think it's like forced vulnerability.
I like that word.
People can still choose to resist, but you see other people. It's almost like a manufactured group therapy session, but you're not pushing people, and for the most part, they feel seen. Oh, yeah, I know you guys know I talk a lot, but oh, I do motivate you. Oh, like
Right.
and it has a lot to do with the facilitator, but I even think a C average facilitator can still have a good session. The question is what happens later. And I
Yeah.
think that's, I think you and I leave people in the dust, but that's why these assessments, you can go get a free one online. I don't recommend it if you're serious about your results,
No.
but getting people the chance to feel seen, but also be open to how can I get better and how can I be more respectful and connect to do our job better, but also so that I can live the life that I want. So I'll continue working with this company. It might, be a couple day training or even a couple hours, but that kind of investment is the opposite of that intervention thing that I
Right.
saw that only made things worse. So yeah, it is constructive vulnerability that people still have to come and engage with, and that now depends on that facilitator and the following. But that's why it's so crucial to real change.
I also find that with the tools, it helps managers and leaders, especially the smart ones, especially if you give them this report. Now they understand, how does that particular employee need to be communicated with? What do I need to do to adapt to this person to elevate them and get the most out of them, and for them to feel psychologically safe, heard, and seen? Because too often we're totally dependent on the manager's past experiences. And if they're a brand new manager, they don't have any experiences. So this gives them that instruction manual, that profile, saying, you have a new candidate coming in. This is the type of individual, the type of environment, the way to communicate, the way to manage, their strengths, their weaknesses. It gives them everything, and with some coaching, how to utilize those tools more effectively.
Yeah, it's the playbook. It basically, like, even as someone who's putting these on, whether it's virtual, I prefer in person, but you can get a lot done virtually, which is awesome. Even before I do it, with a little context, I know this team. And there's some things I'm guessing on, but for the most part, I'm a betting person, and just like it's blackjack, you're gonna bust sometimes, but if you know how to play the game, it's the best odds.
Exactly.
And this, for a leader, like, it's weird because I'm like, you know these people, talking to the client, but this information, I'm able to tell you what's inevitable and what's really driving the behavior and action. So it's weird of like, why do you know us so well? And for a long time, I got so much of an ego boost out of that. But it's like, no, it's how do I give this back to you so you can have the team and the results and the work days that you believe are worthwhile having. But yeah, it's immediate. It's so, I think AI will speed it up even further and probably do a better job of like presenting it and like laying it out. But for right now, it, like, when I even like a half hour Zoom, you give me 10 people and we do some assessments and some the insight that a client will get, especially compared to other workshops that they've done, you can just like see it on their face. And then they usually tell you after, of like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And okay, oh, this and that. And then it now becomes like, it's almost like they want to solve these problems as opposed to they're overwhelmed by them. Or maybe they don't see it as problems. They see it as, okay, how can we remix and experiment, try different things. And that's where the team collaborating, when they're now I'm just kind of like watching.
Right, exactly.
And so yeah, it's they're Legos, and people start to put them together themselves, and they're not that complicated. The one-on-ones can be more, and that's where, especially when people are really trying to grow and develop, you want the privacy. But the group, you can't replicate that.
Not at all.
And especially in person, the opportunities that those present will, like I said, I'm a fan of in person, but when you have these assessments and you have 20 people in a room, the synergy, the side conversations that are going to come out of it, the vibes, like literally scientifically probably are invaluable. You won't get them anywhere else.
Speaking of invaluable insights, talk to me about your book.
Yeah, I jokingly say it's a long blog, but the reason why is because I'm like, there's a lot of leadership books and workplace books, and not bad, but I felt fairly kind of, they're saying a lot of the same things. So I was like, what do I want to say that's unique? Speaking of kids, especially if I don't live long enough for them to have careers. And so I cut that down to about 40%. This book's of roughly 70 pages of a lot of what we've already talked about today, the truth about what leaders are going in and caring about, the jobs and the roles, but ultimately ourselves, like how you show up and view this is going to determine so many other things. And the mindset, I kind of wish I'd already changed the name, but that's what it is like, everyone says have a good attitude, but how? What, just you can fake it till you make it. Again, another phrase that I don't think helps as much as other things can help. It's like, how do I say trick myself into caring, but also realize, oh, I don't care. I don't want to do this job. So what do I need to do to get the next job? And the like I said, roughly 70 pages. I explain the concepts of the assessments that we've talked about, but more importantly, it's like how I think the expectations for what work is supposed to do are really unrealistic. Okay. Employees think, I'm supposed to get paid the most money so I can be fulfilled and have a pension. Crazy thing. Like I wanted those things, but also employers think I should have hardworking, loyal people for the same salaries I paid 20 years ago. And those same people should come into work, even though they know that they can do the job at home because I said so. So it's like these expectations, the goalposts are constantly moving. So I'm like, okay, what can I share that I know will help someone just kind of gather center, to your pendulum analogy, or repent and realign with their values. And so that's what the book's about. It's kind of for everyone, but going back to Career Blindspot, it's, look, you're going to hire someone, but here's all the changes that are going to happen. Also, you're in this position. Are you really that happy? And I'll end this way. I don't believe it's a manager or leader's job, and feel free to disagree, to make their employees happy. I think that's really unrealistic. I do think it's a manager's job to provide the tools and resources that their employees can do the job and a livable wage. I think it's a hell of an opportunity when you have people who do the job well to keep them happy. And that's when we're talking about high performers. And, happiness, that's a very broad term. Yeah. But I tell people, I was like, look, how many managers have you had that seem that happy? And I'm not saying they're all of them, but, there's a reason we have these cliches that people don't leave bad jobs. They leave bad managers, which, okay. But it's like, how much do you expect that person to give you what they want? And so I tell people, I go, heed the advice, or be wary of someone who's giving you advice based on their regrets. But it's not to say every manager is bad. They're just trying to do their job. They have their own personal life. But the minute you get someone who says, hey, here's a new work mindset, or hey, I want you to do this coaching, that's on you if you mess that up. Because now you have a company, a leader who is at the very least giving you time, if not paying for these quality engagements. That is a hell of an opportunity that I wish does become the norm. I know it's more popular, but I don't think it's the default. Right. No. But it's don't expect people who did not get taught how to be better leaders to teach you how to lead your career. And at the same time, those of us who I have a special affinity for leaders who are really good. They care about people, but they're kind of burnt out. I play with the phrase, they're generous, but they create entitlement. Yeah. And it's like, it's your fault. Stop. Have some boundaries. And so really that book is kind of for them. Gotcha. Yes, it's for my kids, but it's for these people who hit that ceiling of, I want to help other people, but they're not helping themselves. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, sort of thing. This book is kind of like, well, here's what you should do about it.
It's a fantastic book. And especially, I see so many people that make the role their identity, right? Yeah. Or organizations that are doing all the right things, providing the tools, the resources, the skilling and everything, and employees just want to show up from a 9 to 5 to get a paycheck. Well, that goes all the way back to you hired the wrong person. If everything is right, and it's up to managers to either, you may not be in the right place, because if you're doing what you love, it doesn't feel like work, especially if it's in the right culture and the right management and leadership that wants to see you succeed, right? So happiness depends on how fulfilled you feel doing those things. So it's not about skill, but it's also about that positioning. And I really recommend this book because it creates so much clarity and insights that most of us don't think about, because we're in that day-to-day situation, that provides not only great advice, but a lot of how-tos. So where can they find this book, Juan?
The quickest way, Amazon, or you can come directly to my site, and it's, I believe, $5 or 20% off less. Okay. Careerblindspot.com, and I believe it's the buttons right there. Yeah. As well as a DIY hiring document that you and I have talked about. Yeah. So, but this concept, I like I said, I love all the change, but my heart goes out to everyone else who's
Yeah.
not prepared for it. But it is fun, and we didn't even say this word, but I do want to add you're familiar with fractional roles, right?
Yes.
With the executives.
CEO fractional,
I didn't
CEO
hear about
fractional,
it until
CEO.
about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I think that's the future of high
Yep.
performers. That if you're truly someone who knows what you're good at, you can get paid high. I don't think you stay in a role permanently, or even, more than 2 years. That people who really want the challenge and expect the pay and the flexibility and, more important, the autonomy, that's
Yep.
the big stepping stone
I
opportunity.
absolutely agree.
And it's not to say people who don't get there are failures, because people's like, look, if I have a comfortable job that gives me time and more than enough money to enjoy all the great things in life, fantastic. But they don't need all the challenges. They're content with being 60% of themselves, but also having the rest of their life to do whatever. And so I think that those people who are struggling to figure out, who am I, but also who am I hiring, this book will be helpful for you to kind of, I don't want to say diagnose, because I do think everyone changes. A major life event, someone dies in your family, you get a disease, or you win the lottery.
Right.
Things change. But the stuff that I was writing about in the book about work, things still apply. I think all of us actually do want to just work harder and spend more money on things we care about. And the idea of retirement and 2 weeks notices, they're still helpful, but they're more limiting today, because you have to be more adaptable, but also like creative risk. What's worth it to you? And it's hard because you see everyone on social media posting this stuff, and you don't know what works for you, yet alone, it's scary. Making the change on purpose is scary. Getting change is scary.
Absolutely.
But, it's like, which lane do you want to pick? So thank you for Baroni that.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of fractional, I was a fractional CEO for a company, and I absolutely agree. It is the future, right? Because they didn't need a full-blown chief operating officer. They just needed someone to organize, train, bring things together, bring some outside expertise. And then once they got going, coaching a little bit, and then you're gone. So I think that's going to be a big wave of the future. All right, so we have a tradition of how we close our podcast, and that usually is we have our previous guest leave a question for our new guest to answer.
Oh, nice.
So here's your question. What are the top 5 compliments you receive on a regular basis?
The first, my wife said to me years ago, but it pops up, you are always blunt but kind.
Blunt but kind. So you're a velvet hammer is what you're saying.
I'll take that as my pro wrestling name, yes. And my clients have more or less, Juan cuts through the bullshit, but he always does it like compassion. I'm like, oh.
Okay. Yes, you do. I see that.
Bill J. Bonstetter, the man behind our Science Self Premium Assessments, God rest his soul. When I worked for him, and we butted heads plenty, but I remember I started presenting at our conferences where I meet more seasoned, amazing people like yourself. And I was training the trainers around the world, and I loved it. I was having a time. And he came up, and I was like, not like scared, but he just shook my hand. He goes, and I still remember how it felt.
Yeah.
And he's like, you really commanded the stage. And I think he said something else, but my mind went blank after that. But I still remember how it felt to get, it's like the inventor of basketball told me I have a nice jump shot. So those are my favorites. And I keep getting compliments on how I podcast and interview, which I can see how much more I talk than my guests on my tech, but it means a lot that people enjoy my nuance. So those are my favorites.
Okay. So now it's your turn. What question would you leave for the next guest to answer?
And all the guests are business people.
No,
right?
It's from all walk. It doesn't matter who it is.
Over.
Just one question.
All over. Okay. If you were going to be able to pick any co-facilitator and present like a TED Talk or educate the world on a topic, what topic and who would you pick to co-facilitate with you?
What topic and who would you pick? I like that. Perfect. Awesome. Juan, we could do this for hours, and we're going to have to have you back because I want to narrow down into, hybrid workforce, right? Especially right now, how do we do performance and behavioral KPIs? So there's a lot more we want to jump into, and we're going to definitely have you back for that. But in the meantime, I can't thank you enough for sharing your expertise, your wisdom, your insight, guiding us through those WTF moments and creating what's the fix moments. you're an expert at what you do. So thank you for your time and for your expertise.
Thank you, man. You know who you are to me, but yeah, this guy, if you're listening to this podcast, you're doing something good for yourself. So keep it up, and thank you, Rico.
I appreciate that very much. And to all my listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure that you hit that thumb button, leave some comments, and that helps us to continue to grow and bring other great guests just like Juan, and to make sure that we provide value for you. Until the next time, I'm Mr. Rico. See you then.